Welcome to the Nightmare DP Calphayus tanking guide. I will be occasionally pausing the video to explain fight mechanics. For the first part of this fight, I will show the fight twice. I will begin with going to the left past side for phase 1, and then the right future side for phase 2. The second part of the fight will consist of the opposite, going to the right future side for phase 1, and the left past side for phase 2. We start the fight in the present. Calphayus gives a lot of spike damage during the present, so use cooldowns liberally. I start by tanking him with my back to the door, while the rest of the group stands immediately behind the boss within melee range. After the cast Inevitability, the boss knocks me back and I get a red debuff. If I take any damage from the boss while I have this debuff, I will instantly die. Thus, my co-tank picks up the boss while I stand behind the boss still within melee range. You need to make sure that the group stays in melee range whenever you are in the present. It is easy to pull the boss away from the group during this tank swap, causing group members to be too far away from the boss. If this happens, people who are close but not close enough to the boss may get the red circle. The red circle does a lot of damage and will root any players who are inside the circle but not the target of the circle. If you have the red debuff from Inevitability, you are guaranteed to be one-shot if you stand within the circle. Boss transitions when he is at around 79%. I move to the left blue circle to go to phase 1. It is a good idea to jump in order to update the server on your location, guaranteeing that you are correctly ported into the past or future. The boss spawns near the throne and I pick him up. During these phases, it is important not to leap or run away from the boss too quickly. It may cause him to leap to you, which deals a lot of damage. The crystal spawns in the back of the room and we slowly run over to it. 3 adds will spawn here: Ravagers, Despoilers, and Corruptors. Ravagers are melee and will attack anyone. Make sure to keep aggro on these so that they do not hurt the DPS or healer. The Despoilers are ranged and will only focus on attacking the crystals, so don't worry about taunting them. Finally, Corruptors will spawn, cast a dot, and then disappear. They do this so quickly that there's no point in tanking them, just let them do their thing. Stack as many adds together along with the boss to maximize AoE DPS. The boss needs to be pushed below 20%, at which point he puts up a shield and stops attacking. Continue killing adds until the seed is ready. Pick up the seed and plant it behind the throne as dictated by the future group. The seed can only be planted once the past and future groups Calphayus have their shields up, so it is common to have to wait a little bit while the future group finishes pushing Calphayus. We transition back to the present. I highly recommend having whichever tank with the shortest loading screen initially taunt Calphayus during this phase. Oftentimes, he is targeting a healer or DPS after the transition and will quickly one-shot the player if you do not immediately pick him up. Again, taunt him with your back to the door while making sure that the rest of the group is within melee distance of the boss. The boss casts Inevitability and we tank swap. Calphayus transitions again when he is at 49%. Both groups must swap sides, so I head to the right orange circle to the future. Again, Calphayus spawns in the middle of the room and I pick him up. DPS him down until he is at 79%. Then he will jump to one of the 4 fountains around the room and destroy a crystal. In this case, he went to the back left fountain and destroyed the 2 o'clock crystal. I passed the information on to the past group while heading over to DPS the orb that just spawned. The orb will wipe the raid if it reaches the fountain, so DPS them hard. Purple circles will occasionally spawn during this part of the fight. They don't do a significant amount of damage, but the healer will be DPSing during this part of the fight, so it's a good idea to avoid the extra damage if possible. Once Calphayus' shield drops, return to DPSing him. I slowly move him away from the current fountain since he will jump to one of the other 3 fountains next time. The boss drops below 50% and jumps to the front left fountain, destroying the 7 o'clock crystal. I tell this to the past group and we run over to DPS the orb. The past group kills their crystal before we kill our orb, causing the orb to disappear at 18%. Because of this trick, it is common for the future group to wait a little bit on pushing Calphayus to give the past group enough time to AoE down the crystals. This way, you really only need buffs or adrenals on orbs 1 and 2 rather than all 3 orbs. I move Calphayus between the right 2 fountains since he can only jump to one of those 2 fountains. Once at 29%, he jumps to the front right fountain and destroys the 7 o'clock crystal. I call this out and help DPS the orb. Again, the past team was faster at DPSing the crystal than we were at DPSing our orb, causing the orb to disappear early. Now we wait for the final transition back to the present. Again, I immediately taunt the boss after the transition and return to the door. Once Calphayus drops below 20%, phase 3 begins and I head to the right orange circle. There, Calphayus is waiting for me in the future. He will stay in his shield and not attack me until I approach him, so I wait at range until the rest of the team is ready. He hits hard during this phase, so that's why I don't immediately pick him up. What I do instead is make sure that he's aggroed on me by taunting him. If not, the fight will reset. Once the person with the seed said that he was almost ready to plant the seed, I walk up to Calphayus and he begins attacking me. I drag him over to the left where the yellow circle spawns. If Calphayus is in the circle, his shield will drop and you can DPS him. We get him to 5% before the shield goes back up. My co-tank picks up the boss and begins kiting him around the room while I return to the present. And then I go left to the blue circle. It is also common to sometimes leave DPSing the boss early so that you can pick up the seed and plant it in time. There, in the past, behind the throne you can pick up the seed. Doing so spawns an ad which will root you. Try to leap to the ad before it starts casting its root ability so that you get a little bit of a head start. Once the ad is dead, feel free to use your speed boost to get to the door faster. The seed does do periodic damage, so use cooldowns as needed. If you have stealth, you can avoid having to DPS the ad by picking up the seed, waiting until the ad turns towards you, stealthing out, and then using rocket boost. Make sure to tell your co-tank when you are going through the portal so that they can get the boss into position. Once I'm in the present, I am pulled to the right table. The red text tells me that I'm only able to plant the seed after the ad and the present is dead. Once I do so, I head back to the future and help DPS down the boss. We begin the fight. When Calphayus reaches 79%, we transition to phase 1. I head to the right orange circle. I pick up the boss. We attack him until an ad spawns. I position the boss so that he is very close to the ad. The ad begins a 15-second cast. If it does not die before the end of the cast, it will give my group mass affliction. This dot does a lot of damage and can be cleansed by a sorcerer. However, it is obviously best to kill the ad before the channel finishes. This is a tough DPS check and your healer will have to help DPS. As a result, you should watch your health while the ad is out and to use cooldowns as necessary. Once the ad is dead, we continue DPSing Calphayus until another ad spawns. Continue until Calphayus is below 20% and puts up his shield. Then the pass group will be able to plant their seed and end phase 1. We must swap sides, so I run to the left blue circle. I pick up the boss. You do not need to DPS him down to a certain percentage during this phase, so just make sure he's not attacking a DPS or healer. Start AoEing down the crystals, but do not kill any of them. Once the future side pushes Calphayus, they will tell you which crystal to kill. You will have 30 seconds to kill the crystal. However, the future side has a very difficult DPS check, which ends when you kill the crystal. Thus, it will greatly help them out if the crystals start out a bit lower. First crystal we have to destroy is in the back right 2 o'clock position, which I marked for this guide. Make sure that you do not leap to the crystals. Again, if you run away from Calphayus too quickly, he will leap to you and deal a massive amount of damage. We kill the crystal and resume AoE. We do not AoE the back right area anymore since the next 2 crystals we will have to destroy can only be chosen from the remaining 3 other areas. Next, the future group says to attack the front left 7 o'clock crystal. Since it has already been DPS down to 60%, it quickly dies and we return to AoEing the remaining 2 areas. The last crystal we are told to kill is front right 7 o'clock. Again, since we have DPS'd it down so low, it quickly dies and we wait for the transition back to the present. And with that, Calphayus is dead for the Empire.